Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. If you guys haven't heard yet, this podcast is formerly known as the Sacred Souls Podcast, and now it is officially the Power and Purpose. So I'm super excited. I think this is one of the newer episodes where I actually get to announce the new name verbally. So thanks for holding space for this podcast, guys, as everything unfolds. And then today's conversation, I'm super excited. I have Colleen Grady. She's a Kundalini educator. Colleen, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations on the rebrand and the rebirthing of your podcast.
Yay, thank you so much. In fact, my 1 year anniversary is coming up in 3 days on October 18th. And I didn't even think about it. It's kind of one of those things that just came through in a meditation. And then throughout the day, I just started taking action. And then I realized my 1 year anniversary for this podcast was coming up. And I was like, oh, that just works out perfectly.
Ah, that's exciting. It's like the celebration podcast then, the 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So I'm super excited for our convo today, partly because I just love Kundalini yoga. That's been just a really grounding practice for me, especially with nervous system regeneration, nervous system regulation, expansion, all the good stuff. And Kundalini awakening and just Kundalini education in general, I think is so important. And yeah, we'll dive into some great questions today. First, I love to ask people this question, and you can answer this in a literal way or in a philosophical way. Who are you and who are you not?
That's a big question. It's a big question to start off. Okay. Hmm. Well, some things about me. I would say maybe some descriptors. I would say I'm very creative. I'm very feminine. I'm very curious. I'm very expressive. I'm very lively. And who I am not. Hmm. Hmm. Who I am not. I am, yeah, I am, I don't know why I am stuck on this question. It's a big first question. Who I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't, there's nothing that's
Beautiful.
in my mind for that. I'm sorry.
No, all good. And you know what's interesting is sometimes when we are feeling so connected to the world or everything, or like the trees, the beach, the ocean, each other, it is kind of hard to, or not hard, maybe challenging in the moment to be like, well, I'm not this, because it does, we do, I mean, yes, we're individuals. So, but with you, with your work, I mean, I imagine that you're constantly just merging yourself with energy and all the things. And so I totally get it. I ask myself this question a lot just because it's been another grounding practice for me through my evolution and all the different awakenings that I've had. And I love just redefining, even though I know that definition is not going to stick around long. It might just be like for the week when I define who I am at that time. But it's just really fun to kind of see it change. And I love your answer too. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's also hard to see outside of yourself, right? You get so used to understanding you and how you work. And then obviously with contrast, we can see, oh, I'm not this or I'm not that. But yeah, when we're so used to being within ourselves, then it's like, okay, wait, how do I define this? I think that can be even hard for me sometimes with like branding, like really honing a thing in. Like when you're also really creative and really expansive, you can go in a lot of different ways. So that tightening up and like creating the guideline of something, I think sometimes that can be challenging. More and more, it
Yeah,
used to be very easy for me, but more and more, it's been more difficult.
totally. Yeah. It's part of the journey of expanding, I think. And so now I want to start off just by talking about some of the basics of what Kundalini is and how you communicate that message to people. And then we'll go into a little bit of your story later. But what is Kundalini energy?
Yeah, so if we talk about the basics of Kundalini energy, we have a spiritual energy that is stored within our lower body. And so with time, that energy will start to open up and expand throughout your system. And we hear often about the Kundalini awakening. And that used to be more described as just like a one-off spiritual phenomena. But I really think that it's something that's a process. It's not, it can happen in this one time, but that's very, very, very rarely that it's a one-off thing. It's very much of how do you develop with it? How do you work with it? And as you continue to expand the energy throughout your body, it has a very cleansing and a very purifying quality to it. So naturally, as we start to bring it out, amplify it out, the energetic blockages, energetic densities that are stored within our overall field start to disperse, they start to dissolve. And so things that are stored in our overall field are things like suppressed emotion, it's thought forms, it's our beliefs, it's our conditioning. All of that also holds an energy. And so when we work with Kundalini and we're continually layer by layer peeling, dispersing, dissolving heavier energies or energies that aren't us, we come back to our more pure, more authentic state. And so with that, and why this is not just a one-off thing that happens, it's like your life needs to make small pivots as you do it, right? There's small pivots here, here, here as you're ready for it. And the journey can be tough because sometimes we see these things that are not in alignment with us that we've been showing up for, participating in, eating, consuming, whatever it is, and we have to make a change. And so that's also why it's not something we want all to happen at one time because that's very disorientating to the body. We want to be slowly just being able to make adjustments where we can, the more that we work with that.
I have something amazing that is unfolding for the whole month of December in preparation for 2025. And that is my brand new container, Astro Aligned Business Bootcamp. It's a business boot camp with one-on-one support, community support, and a full online self-paced course, all bundled together in one monthly membership. Again, I am launching this for the first time ever in December 2024 in preparation. It's going to be happening all year long for 2025. And you can join now. You can get early bird pricing and you can lock in early bird pricing for your first 3 months of membership. Super, super exciting. Now, here's what it is. It will help you revolutionize your business with high-level astrology and human design strategies. Yes, operating your business in accordance to what is going to work best for your energy, your energetic blueprint. We can get instructions, specific instructions on your highest probabilities for your business. So if you are really ready to rebrand your business, re-strategize, set a strong foundation going forward, or maybe you are just starting out your business, this will be absolutely necessary and helpful, and it will help you accelerate with ease and grace. Check out the link again for the month of December. You get the early bird pricing of $318 a month, and you lock it in. You lock it in for the first 3 months. I am super excited. You'll get one-on-one strategy calls, and there's a group container, a group call every month alongside the online course material. I'll see you in the Astro Aligned Bootcamp. Yeah, so fascinating. So just to recap for those who are still processing everything, Kundalini energy, it's within us, right? It's not outside of us, it's within us. And
Well,
would
it's
you
both.
say it's both? Okay, yes. Oh, yes, please correct me. And would you say it's dormant? That's what you're essentially saying with the awakening, right? It's within us, it's without it, it's also outside as well. And then there's a moment or process, whether it's instantaneous or it's a longer process where it starts, that dormant energy starts to awaken.
Yeah, so everyone does have this energy within their bodies, and everyone's availability of how open they are, how ready they are to awaken it is going to be different. And there's kind of a different, it's organic, the sequence of, I think, equation that it takes to open up the energy. But the more open your body is, the more connected you are with your energy, the more times that you meet the energy, and the more that you kind of dealt with some of your emotional stuff, it creates a lighter body. The lighter body energetically that we have, the easier it is to open the energy up.
Beautiful. And what drew you into Kundalini work?
Yeah, so for me, I was really into yoga before I did Kundalini work. And I practiced yoga for 10 years. I taught yoga for 5 years, and I was really deep into the yogic path. And it got to a point where I just felt like what I was doing was not it wasn't it. Like I felt like, oh, this is just not the thing that I was looking for. And I was quite disappointing and hard to let go of too, because I spent a lot of time really developing my craft as a yoga teacher and like really went all into exploring that path. But there was like a lot of chronic pain I had in my body and a lot of patterns within myself that I just was like, I thought this would be shifted by now. I thought we would kind of already have dealt with some of this stuff and I would be further along. And so at that time, I just was like, okay, I have to let it all go. And at the time that I was like, okay, shifting, I didn't know what was going to be next. I met someone who does it's similar work to what I do today. And it was a very like serendipitous way that we met. And it was still like exactly on the day that I was like, no more yoga. I met this person. And at that time, he was looking for an assistant to help with some of his marketing work. And I had a yoga blog. And so I had a lot of marketing skills from blogging. And so then I helped him working with some of his online courses and just through our friendship, through working through with him, I really started to open up my body more and get so much more curious about energetics because I felt like that was kind of the next layer for me and exploring the body was how do I start to understand energy more? And I just started feeling a lot better very quickly. I used to think years ago that energy work was something that was very subtle, that like maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Like, I don't know if I even want to give it a go because I don't know, it seems very subtle. And I think more and more energy work is the thing that changes the most. It's like actually like a sledgehammer of the healing practice of when you can really start to tap into shifting your energy. So, yeah, through that relationship, I learned a lot. I became a Kundalini yoga teacher as well. So I have that modality under my belt. And that was a big part of my journey for the first couple of years too, was understanding it from these body-based practices. And then I went on to work for another person that does similar work. And then I went on again to work for kind of another person that's all similar, but they're a bit different. And so I have been lucky to assist under a lot of different modalities of Kundalini. And it helped me really put together kind of my own way of sharing it and a very feminine way of sharing it from kind of being the nurturing feminine presence in so many other people's work. Then I was like, okay, actually, there's a way that I want to share this. And it was really easy. It's something that I think is really easy to be dedicated to because you see results so quickly. You know, like once it helps to keep you going because you're like, wow, that shifted. Oh, I can see that shifted. Like it's something that works very, very fast. And I think that's very exciting because you can do therapies for a long, long time and not see as quick as results as Kundalini. It's very direct in the way that it works and the way that it changes your system quickly.
Yes, absolutely. It's just so powerful. You know, it's invisible. The energy itself, like we can't see it, but we can certainly feel and later see some results, even if that's just in our mood and and like our pep in our step or just kind of that emotional connection, that mental body spirit connection, just really like feeling a drastic difference for some folks who are open to this kind of work. It's just so fascinating. What is the difference between, just for clarity, for anyone who's new to Kundalini, again, they may not have heard about it a lot. What is the difference between Kundalini yoga and Kundalini activations?
Yeah, so within Kundalini, there's kind of a feminine route and a masculine route of working with the energy. So when we talk about a more masculine route, this is like Kundalini yoga, where we're using a lot more discipline, a lot more will, a lot more systematic ways to move and experience the energy. And it's much more usually self-generated of how we're moving energy within our body. And it's very systematized. I think with Kundalini yoga, I think the Kriyas are kind of like a recipe. Like you do this for a certain amount of time, you do this for a certain amount of time, and you're working to raise the energy and get this result. And so then we have more feminine practices of Kundalini, which is something that Kundalini activation would fall under. And that is when there is a direct transmission of the energy. So by someone holding this frequency, holding this energy, your body will attune to that like a tuning fork. Like when you hear a crystal bowl, you hear a vibration. There's an attunement happening to that energy. And it's something that we're not calculating, we're not in our mind doing. It's just the body and the energy meeting, and how does that open up? And it's very mysterious how it works. It's a lot of grace. It can be wild. Like it has all of these feminine aspects to it. So those are the kind of two ways of working with Kundalini. And when we talk about the more feminine practices, that's where we're channeling energy. So that's why when you said, oh, it's and only in your body, I'm like, it's actually something we're connecting to outside of us that we're bringing into a space and we're creating a field of, and then your body is attuning to that field within that space. So it is something outside of us too that we're bringing in when we work with more of the activation, awakening type of practices.
I love that. I love that illustration. So it's both. It's within and we're channeling it from above or wherever. So powerful there. And for for people who are again just really getting familiar with like the process, what are some symptoms? Like how does someone know if they are experiencing a Kundalini awakening, whether it's instantaneous or whether it's over a period of time?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different symptoms and there's a lot of different phases of the awakening too. So it's never like a one cookie cut answer for this type of question. But I will say when people start to have a very an experience of themselves and their body beyond their physical form. I think that's kind of when it starts to happen. So we start to really experience the world at a more energetic level. We can start to feel energy. We usually start to feel more intuitive, more connected to God. Also, there's channeling that starts to happen where people start making these sounds or they think that they're speaking in tongues or different things coming through. That's all different vibrations starting to move through their body. And those are kind of the first phases. And now there's sometimes that people don't know that that's what they're experiencing when they just think, oh, I'm very energetic. I'm very sensitive to energy. They could already have the energy open and awakened. But it really is, it comes with a process, as I said. So there's a maturity to the energy that we work with. So it's not just, again, this one off, a one time or one practice type of thing. The energy will continue to mature throughout your body. And as it continues to mature, your body comes into more alignment with what's naturally best for it. So that may look like wanting to eat different foods. That may look like wanting to participate in different activities. That might look like lifestyle changes need to be made. That might look like just more connection to God. That's also really, I think people experience God in a very different way because now they're more in tune to these subtle realms. Now they're more open. Now they have such a bigger experience of feeling and being with and in connection with the world that they haven't had before. And that really starts to open them up to a kind of a totally new domain that they didn't have such an experience of before.
Mm, right. Okay, beautiful. And so it's really like this alignment process, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it's always an alignment process. And I think that it's always for the greater good of ourselves, but it can be confronting too, because it's not always easy to let go of the things that aren't in alignment for us, whether that's partnerships, whether that's jobs, whether that's places we live, whether that's we now have a realization of ways that we've been behaving, and now we see a totally different perspective. And that maybe it's hard to see the things that we used to do before. But I think this is also where it can you hear about Kundalini, they're like, oh my God, it blew up my whole life. Like
Hmm.
all these things went wrong. It's like actually you just saw things a lot more. Usually, most of the time, I won't say every time, but most of the time, it's like you're really confronted with seeing things a lot more clearly and having to make these shifts. And that can be overwhelming, but it's not that it's blowing up your whole life. It's actually doing the best thing that could possibly happen for you in your life. And that might just take time to really let that sink in and let that shift happen.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. That one of those questions was coming, and yeah, we'll keep diving into that. And people have heard, different stories of experiences that were maybe a little too shocking, right, to the individual that communicated or shared their story. They're like, I got destabilized, I felt like I was crazy, or just you know, intensity, like intense experiences, or yeah, their life being like, oh my God, my life is falling apart. I'm, divorcing this person or my job and da, da, da. And it's also, um, it's an awakening, right? Like that awareness is coming out of the fog. And so can you expand more on some of the experiences where people feel like chaos comes in a little bit more, or they feel like, yeah, things just got shooken up, or they feel destabilized.
Yeah, well, I think it's again, it's that confrontation of things that need to change. And then it's like, do they have the bravery and the courage and the stamina to make the change that needs to happen? And as well, you do get more sensitive. So naturally, we're all pretty sensitive beings, I think, but living in a very stimulating world and not knowing how to deal with our emotions, because emotions, the more that we suppress our emotions, usually the less we sense, because emotions are just like energetic blockages. And when we have so many experiences we've suppressed through our body, when we start to bring those up and we start to really, it's almost like a de-thawing process. Like if you had a frozen piece of steak and it starts to slowly de-thaw, it kind of is like that with Kundalini. There's this really like all of the armor that we've put up starts to melt away, it starts to come off. And so sometimes in that de-thawing process, you have to deal with the pain that was there. You have to deal with this emotion that never got the chance to express itself, to be with. And so that can be overwhelming as well, because now it's here to be processed. And to that, I would say you can move through processes way quicker than you probably think you can, especially when we're working at a body and an energetic level. Things can shift very, very, very quickly. It's usually actually our mental level that spends weeks, months, years caught up in an experience or emotion. It's all very mindy, but to move something out of the body, it can move very quickly. But it's like, are you ready to kind of play in that domain of I'm just open to what I'm going to experience and where the energy and where my emotions are going to go, whether it feels miserable, whether it feels euphoric? Can I hold all of that and continue to explore my body and explore my energy to get even closer to this place of purity within myself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. And what is the difference between Kundalini work and other types of energy modalities? And there's so many. I'm an intuitive healer, so I typically blend a few practices together and really just let the energy do its thing. And then, people come back and they're like, and funny enough, one person, they mentioned that they had a Kundalini awakening. And I was like, well, this is in the beginning where I didn't have that much experience, but it happened just during a regular intuitive healing session. I was like, "Oh, are you sure?" I was like, "Because that wasn't my intention, or that wasn't your intention." But I was like, "Hey, if it happened, like it definitely happened for you, and whatever." But I do want to make that distinction, if you can, if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, well, so it can happen within other modalities of energy healing, But for the most part, when we're working with Kundalini, it's very much a body energy. So it is an energy that's within you. So for example, when someone is working with Reiki, although I'm not a Reiki expert by any means, they're still funneling energy and they're just kind of working on the overall field to create more harmony, to create more homeostasis, right? But with Kundalini, we are opening up a energy that's within our bodies.
Hmm.
So first of all, I would say the facilitator, the energy healer, they usually have to have that energy awakened and at a maturity level within their body. So there's this very much this meeting of the two energies that are happening when you are working with Kundalini. And with other modalities of energy, it's usually that you are connecting to an energy source. So our crown chakra, it's kind of like an antenna for different frequencies, for different streams of energy. And so when people are working with Kundalini energy, that's a specific energy that they are, getting their dial to, tuning into, and that's what they're bringing in to create a field with, where other modalities of energy are sourcing energy in different places, or they are have different intentions of working with it.
Beautiful. And that's a beautiful distinction too, just to provide clarity, because some of us it feels more secure, at times, just to work with your own energy, or to exactly what Kundalini is, right? Like, just kind of have that fostered, nurtured, activated, as opposed, and it depends on what your intentions are, right? Like, if you just really want to work on your root chakra, you just want like a quick tune up, then yeah, like Reiki or some of those other practices can be helpful. But if you're really, that intention of full alignment, full awakening, processing those emotional blocks that you mentioned earlier, I think Kundalini work is really perfect for that.
Mhm. I would agree.
Yeah. So, what are some ways or challenges in which Kundalini may not be rising if a person has that intention? Are there some challenges or blocks that can typically happen?
Mhm. Yeah, so kind of what that equation comes out to be. So, as I said a little bit before, emotional blockages, usually the amount of emotional suppression and really like containment of heavier energies within the body can make it more difficult to open up the energy. So, the more that we have had hard experiences, we haven't known how to process them, we've pushed them down, we get less sensitive. It's like an armor that gets built up on the body. The more armor that we have built up on the body, it's not necessarily that the energy might not be working on us, because I think at a subtle level, it's still shifting things, but it's not necessarily opening up for us. We're not having this huge opening and rising of energy. So that's one thing. The other thing's also just having low prana within the overall body. Like there is a certain level of just overall energy that you have in your body that needs to be there so that's like the flame can light a little bit, so the energy can start to rise. There can also be a lot of maybe subconscious barriers or blockages. If you don't already feel safe in your body, then it's probably not going to happen for you that you're going to have a very strong body energy rise and open up, right? If we already have a really trouble feeling ourselves, well, this energy is going to take you into feeling 10 times more. So if you can't be there and feel into yourself, okay, well, then it's going to be hard for the energy to rise, because there's a lot of this that is about deep, deep, deep feeling. And the deeper you can feel yourself, the more the energy can open up. But if you can't get there, then that's kind of the first level of it. And then we also have disconnection from the body, which I think kind of leads into what I was saying. Just some people, I think that even if people are fit, like people who are super fit, or they even go to yoga a lot, that still it's like my mind is telling my body what to do. My mind's very much in control of how I'm oriented in my body. And so if you don't have this connection of like being within yourself, this more embodiment feeling and letting the body be the guide, that's I think it's a pathway of trusting yourself and like learning about your system that needs to happen for the energy to really rise and open up within the body. And then there's just an element of overall grace, which is kind of the mystery of it all, too. We can't exactly say how it's going to happen for everyone. There is, a higher power at work with these things, so it will open up when it's supposed to. And yeah, we can't define everything so systematically, but those are kind of the most common way things that I see within the body. But as I said, if you are still working with Kundalini and you're not experiencing a big opening, there are still subtle shifts that are happening, and all of that does continually add up to the day that your body is really ready for that opening, because we also don't really want to push ourselves, because as we also have said, it can be confronting. It can be a lot to come into deeper alignment with ourselves. And so we want to make sure we're really ready to handle the work on ourselves that needs to be done. And maybe there's just more ways of growing or maturing that need to happen. And we are Grace, like we are lucky that Grace hasn't maybe opened that energy up for us. So.
Yay, Super Soul. Have you ever thought about how expansive your life purpose actually is? Have you ever just thought about it? Well, here's the thing. Most people just think of their life purpose as being one thing, and that's never really the case. Or most people just think of it as like this vague, mysterious, general idea, or just like one word, right? And that's a great start, but there's so much more in store for you to really master the details of your life purpose. And when we have a framework and when we have the answers and almost like this instruction manual that comes from your astrology and your human design charts, we get concrete ideas and concepts that you can execute with strategy, confidence, and clarity. So check out my Purpose Report program. It is a one-on-one container, and also starting in 2025, it will be one-on-one support plus group support. Now, this is different from the Astro Align Business Bootcamp. You don't need to have a business to join the Purpose Report program. This is really about your life purpose. And so I encourage you to check out the link, take the quiz on the website, see where you're at, and just start taking those first small baby steps towards, again, not just discovering your life purpose. This is not just about discovering your life purpose. I really don't like that term because it doesn't really give us anything. What does that mean? Discover our life purpose. We need to master the details. The diamond is in the details. The rewards are in the details. The momentum is in the details. The success is in the details. So go to the link for the Purpose Report program, check it out, take the quiz. There's a soul purpose alignment quiz. That is step one. Take the soul purpose alignment quiz, and that will lead you to the next steps. But just take that one small baby step, and I will see you on the other side. Have a fantastic day. Back to the show. Yeah, two questions. I know it's typically it's a process for most of us. Yes, some people have those instantaneous unlocking experiences or activations. So I understand the process, and that was my situation as well. I went through a process. It wasn't instantaneous. But have you ever heard of or experienced with any of your students or clients like a delayed response, separate from it just being a process, if that makes any sense?
Um, so a delayed response in a delayed opening, or a delayed response in seeing the effects of the energy?
Delayed opening.
Um, yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily that it's delayed. I would just say that it just took time to open up, and until your body got to that right equation of where it was really ready to open, it was just kind of taking off layers in preparation for when
Mm.
that moment happened. That's what I would say. But there are times, maybe if people would describe that as delayed, where they're experiencing energy, I find that for whatever reason, when they were in the situation of doing Kundalini yoga, of experiencing Kundalini activation. They didn't experience anything, and then they go home and they feel more energy in their body, something like this happening. That's usually because they feel in a more safe and relaxed space for the energy to open up. So something when they were actually in the class maybe had been subconsciously blocking them from feeling that presence and safety that's needed for the energy to open up and rise. And then once they get relaxed, once the body sinks into a little bit more stillness and is like, okay, you're finally here to let me take the lead, then the energy might come back up, or then you might experience more of that because you're in a very much more relaxed and safe space. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And before we hit record today, I told you I went to a CAP class, a Kundalini Activation class on Sunday, and I hadn't been in a while. But I was actually really tired when I got back. Does that happen? And do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so just as the energy is always bringing you into alignment, we don't really know how that
Right.
is going to be. So, for example, if there's maybe energy shifting in your body that have been hanging on for a long time, your body might just need to go into more rest to be
Hmm.
able to process and really integrate whatever shifts have been made. Some people can feel sad or like they're upset with what they experienced in the session or how it went after the session. They're like, oh gosh, it didn't work, or like, I didn't get into euphoria. I didn't have all this pleasure in my body. Like, why even do this? Right? And it's actually not, I think, well, the way that I view it, and I really think the way that the work should be viewed, it's not what we're experiencing in the session as much as like we're going for the experience of how it changes our lives, of how it shows up in our lives, of how it shows up in the person that I am and how I behave and how I show up in the world. That's what I'm really going for. Like, yeah, of course, I like to feel the energy and it's fun and it can be explorative. That's a bonus. I'm more wanting the results of like what this energy is giving me and what it might take to get those results. Who knows what that could be? So it could be exhausted. It could be feeling angry the next couple of days. It could be feeling really sad. It could just be having really strong intuitive hits of what you need to do next. It's going to be different for you every time that you come. But I think there is this, I think Kundalini does also teach you this allowance and acceptance. And that's something you really have to open up to within how your process is going, because every time it's going to come out a little bit different.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of that typical saying that we all use, don't judge a book by its cover.
Mhm.
It's almost like the same, like, try not to place judgment or even expectations on your process while you're still in it, while you're still experiencing it. Just kind of try to release those judgments or expectations and just let things unfold. Because those subtle shifts that you were mentioning, things kind of happening below the surface, we may, our mind is always looking for evidence because it's logical, like, ooh, like, did I feel, did I have a breakthrough, like, am I good, did I get rid of that thing from 2 years ago, like, what's going on? We try to measure it so much, a little too much, or we're looking for that evidence, like we're hanging on to it, we're attached to it. But yes, the more we can release, the more our body and our soul and our spirit can just do its thing and integrate, and then you'll see the results. The proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, it will. And sometimes it takes time as well. I think that's also what I thought of when you're like, is there a lag? And it's like, I do sometimes think it just takes time for us to maybe actualize the results that it's making, because sometimes it's so integrated when the change happens that doesn't even seem that you were a completely different way before, because this new way of behaving or way you're being is so natural. It's like, so this is now my natural cycle, that you forget that it was even like that. So it takes time to then notice from the outside, oh, wait, I don't do that anymore. And it's so natural for me not to do that. And wow, I didn't even realize how long I had come on whatever the thing was. It just shifted very seamlessly. And here we are.
Yeah, yeah. So important. Our awareness can it can take time for us to notice. Exactly. And that goes with any personal growth, any spiritual journey, I think, any process of expansion. Sometimes we're so much in the trees and there's nothing wrong with it. We can't see the whole forest because we're in between the two trees, so to speak. We're in the detail of it. But the bigger picture might take some time to actually see. So that's so beautiful. Now I want to switch into just talking more about the work that you're doing with training other people who want to do this work, right? Who want to kind of like expand this work out to so that it's available for others. Um, what do you love the most about being a Kundalini educator?
Oh, what do I love the most? I really do love it. I feel that, yeah, in so many ways. And for so long, I've been doing kind of different, like, there's been a lot of different steps to get here, a lot of different paths that have all kind of come together to lead to this. I really love to see, I think, how people develop into themselves. There's nothing more rewarding than that, especially when it's someone that totally surprises you with a way that you can just see how much more confident they are in themselves, how much more alive they feel. It's like a totally like flip of the script, and they're doing so much better and they're so much happier and like that. And it's usually so left field. It wasn't something that I could predict. It wasn't something that like yeah, I knew was going to happen. It's just like, wow, to see that change is really rewarding. I also find that overall within the Kundalini kind of space, as it's gotten really popular in the last couple of years, there's not a lot of education around it. So a lot of trainings are just transmission based. So we're just doing the energy work. And I find that is actually very limiting to all of the different ways that we can understand Kundalini and all the different ways we can work with it. So for me, when I see my students really taking a lot of my teachings and kind of that embedding that into their work and for the ways that they talk about it and the ways that they describe it and the ways that they educate other people, that is super rewarding for me as well, because as I said, when there's not a lot of education out there, then when people aren't trained well, then they kind of pass down, okay, here's my limited education, and it gets more and more diluted, and it wasn't much to start with. And then I think that people don't get the really full potential out of it, and it just becomes actually more unsafe and more questionable what people are doing. So I feel that it feels, yeah, really good to bring that quality of integrity in education and like setting people up to grow as bright and as big as they want to grow with it is, yeah, it's the best part of doing this work.
Yes, I love it. Creating mastery in this type of work. And you're right. I don't think there is a lot of education around it. And I think that's why, like, that's how we got connected is there was something about like your title. I was like, oh, Kundalini educator. Like, oh, this is slightly different. Let me pause. Let me see what Colleen is up to. And yeah, that kind of drew me in because there was so much more depth around what you were sharing around Kundalini. It's not like just like here's someone who's had an awakening, or it's not just like the glitz and the glamour of it. It was just more of the deeper wisdom, and that really supports the whole process. So really fascinating. And what is your vision as you continue? And let me just say this. I'm assuming, or at least I'm also in the spiritual space, spiritual business. I feel like there's our demand is rising. At least that's what it feels like. And I talk to other people as well in the spiritual space or energy spaces, and same thing. The demand is rising, more people are waking. I think most of us can agree to that on some extent. So with that happening, with the demand rising, if you believe that, like, what is your vision for the work that you're doing, and how it can expand into more spaces, more environments, more people?
Yeah, for me, I think my niche is really working on creating better facilitators. So even people who have already trained, giving them educational pieces and a lot of better skill set and how to work with it. I think that is kind of where my sweet spot has always been. And I feel like people who are already a bit more advanced in the Kundalini space are always the ones that are more attracted to me. So I think for me, it's around like how can I create better facilitators that are sharing this work, that are taking this off, because the better facilitator that you have, I think the deeper that you can go, the better that you're held, the more that you're really given the integration tools and the blueprint of how it can start to shift your life even more. But if that's not given, I think the work is still amazing, but I think it's a much lesser quality that is shared. So how can I up the quality in the way that we're sharing this is really, yeah, I think where my stance is. So right now I'm creating, I'm doing a lot of like online recordings and like really building up my school to have a really strong online portal. That's kind of the next stage for me. I'm doing more in-person stuff as well. So a lot of my business has been online over the last years, and yes, you can do this work online. It's not a scam, I promise. I've had thousands of clients that have really had amazing, profound experiences all online. Um, but yeah, expanding to doing more in-person stuff too, because there is such a special connection I think that you can make when you're in the space and when you're in the field with other people. So we'll be doing trainings in Spain and in Egypt this year.
Ooh, beautiful, beautiful. We're not ending yet, but when we end, you could tell us where to find those links, or I mean, how to find you, and then also your information is in the description box. We will wrap up in a few moments, but what I wanted to say, oh, where'd my thought go? It was right there. I wanted to know your zodiac sign. Do you know your sun, moon, and rising?
Yes, I'm a Cancer. So I'm all about feeling. I feel like that comes through so much in this work. I can really deep feel and make people feel safe and
So
be everywhere,
intuitive. That's
no
like the
tripping
most
over it.
intuitive sign. All
Yes.
Pisces and Cancer together, I think. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm Cancer Sun. I am Sagittarius Moon and Aries rising.
Ah, Aries rising. Okay, I was guessing like a Virgo rising, but Aries. I mean, I love your big three. And only I just wanted. I love adding in some astrology insight whenever we're like really working on mastery. I mean, that's kind of like an Aries trait too. Is kind of like taking leadership and really paving the way and pioneering. That's what exactly what you're doing. You're pioneering a new level of mastery. I was thinking Virgo because you have like the standard of excellence, right? Around training and depth and wisdom around the
Mm.
processes. But yeah, it's all fantastic and it works together. So
Yeah, I think Aries is like I do have a lot of fire. Like I have quite the soft external, and then inside there's a lot of fire to like get the project done, to like keep pushing the dream, to like continue to, yeah, find the speed and the stamina to stick through it all. Because it's a big journey working for yourself.
yes, yes, absolutely.
You
I mean, we
know.
have to lead ourselves before we could lead other people. And that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
hardest part. I mean, it sounds silly to some folks, but it's definitely some work.
it's true.
Yeah. Well, this conversation has been so beautiful. I'm so grateful for your presence here. Your energy is lovely. So now we'll tell people where can they find you, and if you want to make any announcements, feel free. Anything additional.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at kundalini.devi, and my website is kundaliniarts.co. And right now, this will probably come out near the beginning of the year, close to that beginning of the year time. So the next training, I will have another online training. We've done it 3 times online so far. So if you're listening to this from anywhere in the world and you have already experienced Kundalini before and you're curious to be a facilitator, that training will be at the end of January. And then in April, there will be a trip to Egypt where we're going to do the facilitator training and work with the energies of that land. And I think it's going to be super mystical and powerful and opening. And I'm super excited to have that new offer out. And if you ever want to experience Kundalini and this is just your first time, or you're feeling, yeah, the pull to take a step and do it a little bit deeper, I do online sessions every 2 weeks. So.
Beautiful. Yes, that Egypt trip. It just the energy of that feels so
I know.
magical.
I know. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, my like whole
Yeah,
body lights up and I like can't even like control my movements talking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see
amazing.
what will come through.
Oh, so exciting. And I'm sure you and I will keep in contact. All right. Well, thank you again. Yeah, have a beautiful day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Namaste. Hey, Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in to today's podcast. I can't wait to share next week's podcast episode with you. Now, to stay up to date, go to the link for the Power and Podcast website. Sign up for the newsletter so you can actually get on our newsletter and you'll get monthly emails about our podcast episodes ahead of time. So you'll get to see which episodes are planned out for the whole entire month. So that way you know when to tune in. So check out the Power in Podcast website. You could sign up for the newsletter to sign up for those updates, or maybe you just go to the website and check out all the episodes that are highlighted there. Thanks again. Have an amazing, inspiring day.